I'd rather live a life being broke and having the things or the people I love around me than having a ton of money and being unhappy. My name is Sam Shore. I grew up in Rockingham County, went to Broadway, that's about it. One of my passions is cars. Since I was a little kid, liked cars. Anything with wheels really interested me. And it kind of grew and grew and grew, and then once I started getting money of my own, that's what I sunk most of my money into. One of the ways I kind of got into cars was more of just being surrounded by them. That's kind of all my dad worked on. We were one of those families that you don't ever take anything to a shop. You fix it yourself, you do it yourself. So it kind of just became a part of growing up and a part of life. There's always more cars than people in the house, in the driveway, and half of them didn't run, and there was a good reason for half of them not running. Everybody talks about kind of like their poster car, the car they had and a poster in their room, but I was really weird. I never had like a poster car, I just had video games, and that was kind of the only medium that I was able to kind of like express my love of cars out. Little stuff like that kind of snowballed into growing up and being like, oh, okay, this is something I was passionate about. So my first car was a Ford Mustang Cobra. And you gotta remember that, it's the Cobra. I wasn't messing with no, you know. This was 200,000 miles, tired, old V8. I'd never bought a car before. I just made, you know, $2 grand over the last summer. I thought I was rich. I thought I had all the money in the world. But I still remember this redneck dude puts a cigarette out, tells me to hop in, and next thing I know, no seatbelts on, we're both going 100 miles an hour, and he's looking over at me instead of looking at the road, telling me like, yeah, this car's really good, blah, 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 blah. Ended up buying it. And interestingly enough, out of all the cars that I bought, that one was the most reliable. I mean, I have no idea how. I beat the absolute hell out of it, and it just kept on ticking. And ever since then, I got bit by the bug. I got bit by the addiction. It was just kind of a fun thing, and every time I get off work until I got my first speeding ticket, that's kind of just like, I just drive. Let's see here, and my second car was a 2000 Subaru Impreza Outback. Also had way too many miles on it for me to be buying it, but honestly those little Subarus were pretty reliable. It had like 4 inches of lift on it, and it had these huge 1552 white wheels on it. The car was white. I had just gotten a speeding ticket, so I needed something that was slower, and I kind of got into off-roading, and that was kind of like the first thing that came up, and it was just too cool not to have, so I bought it. And I drove that car for, I think that was one of the cars I've owned for the longest. I owned that car for like 2.5 years. But I took it up to the mountain several times, and every time I took it up there, something broke, and I had to fix it. And it's always fun because that car got some of the most looks that I got, even though they were not always approving looks, because it was hellaciously loud. And honestly, kind of turned out to be kind of like one of the staples. Like I still have people like asking me, oh, you still got the Subaru? And I'm like, no, I've matured, I've grown up, I promise. My third car was a 1994 Toyota Land Cruiser. It started off life white, and some dude rolled the car over and sold it to another redneck, of course. I don't buy anything unless it's parked in front of a trailer. He had chopped the truck in half, so it was originally an SUV, and then he turned it into a pickup truck. It was sturdy, but something else to look at, and that was one of my favorite car purchases. I mean, it just went over anything, and that's kind of where I also fell in love with more of kind of like the experiences cars can give you rather than just the cars themselves. Because originally, up to, you know, before I was able to actually buy my first car, that's all you are fixated on is like what you buy. And then as soon as kind of I started to drive and started to learn that like that the opportunities those cars give you are more important than the cars themselves. And that kind of truck gave me a lot of opportunity to go places that I never would have gone without it. So growing up, I had Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the car that I love the most, and I even went into the game for this interview and checked the mileage in the car, but that by far the most mileage on it was the Shelby GT500, and it was kind of like a staple of my childhood growing up, and I never thought I would actually get the chance to own one. And then one night I got on Craigslist and I found it, Shelby GT500, rebuilt title, 10 grand. all day. So I text my buddy and his friend, and I'm like, hey, do you guys want to go drive 5.5 hours with me to Scranton, North Carolina? Like, this thing is out there. And this dude's telling me about how he's like gotten reckless tickets and he crashed his truck and then traded it in. And I'm like, what the f am I getting myself into? We get down there and, you know, he's lying through his teeth about it, how it had never been street raced and that the flood damage really wasn't that bad from the rebuild. But that car was kind of like a dream come true. That was kind of like one of my childhood, always wanted one. And it was kind of a really beautiful moment to come home for the first time and see it in my yard, be like, oh my God, like this is it. This is actually, like, I own one of these. This is crazy. And then I street raced it a bunch and never got caught and went insane speed, and then went on to the next. And then the two cars I bought after that were Chevrolet Caprice PPV and another Land Cruiser 94, but this one was right-hand drive, imported from Japan. Off-roaded that one a little bit, had some fun in it, and now they're both kind of sitting in my yard. Cars became my passion. It became kind of like the way I spent most of my time and most of my money, but I don't know, some of the most integral experiences to me growing up involved being in the car community and kind of learning and kind of honestly growing up as a person through my automobiles. And you kind of see that from, like, I guess my first car to the cars I drive now. The thing that cars taught me the most was about how to view your passions and the things you love. And the things you love and your passion should be kind of like unconditional. If you want to buy a car because it makes you happy and it's something you love, then you do that thing kind of no matter the cost. And some of the opportunities that they did take away from me were kind of like monetary opportunities. I skimped a lot in other areas of my life to save up for these things, but ultimately it was worth it because these things were the things I love. I'd rather live a life being broke and having the things or the people I love around me than having a ton of money and being unhappy. Pursue what makes you happy, do what you love. That's the lesson I learned from doing all of this.